discussion on where we've left. So as I'm saying a while ago, okay, so when you use inductive reasoning, so it's always 50-50. So there is no guarantee that your conclusion is correct. But I would say that 80% it's correct. Yeah, because you base it from this kind of situation. So of course, 60% or 70%, the prediction that you've made is always correct. Okay, but there's still, 30% or 20% that your answer will be incorrect. Okay, so here's the actual, okay, actual drawing of the last example. So now we have here 6 dots, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then connect those lines with each other, and then you can form, or you'll be able to form those forms of regions. So as you can see right here, the maximum number of regions or count of regions is 31 only, okay, not 32. So you can prove that one also. You can verify this one, okay, for yourself. If say you don't believe that the final conjecture is 31. Anyway, is there anyone who's against or who's in doubt that the correct answer is 31? Anyone, or all of you agree?
Sir,
Yes, sir.
agree.
Agree kayo? Siyempre, nandyan na eh. Ang tagal-tagal niyo sumagot. Ibig na mabilis tayo eh. Agreed. Okay. Past tense pa gusto ni Mr. De Polo. Anyway, so knowing that, okay, knowing that we have, this 5 first step that which is true, pero merong isang mali in that pattern wherein it's not part of the pattern anymore because it destroyed the pattern. So if that happened, we could say that it's a counterexample. Okay? So a statement is a true statement provided that it is true in all cases. So we could only say that it is a true statement if in everything from the start up to the end, uh, it is a true or nothing is false in there. Okay. But in here, we could say that, yeah, there's a pattern in this one. Okay. But upon having the 6 points of uh, number, so it destroyed the pattern wherein instead of having a 32, it became 31. So this one is now the counter example. Okay. So it isn't true at all on the entire example. So from the start up to the end. Okay. So if you can find one case, okay, so one case is already enough. Say 1 to 100, one of those are incorrect or one of those is not, or it's like not really part of the pattern anymore. So you could say that it's already a counterexample, okay, where in that statement or that pattern is not true anymore because there's a counterexample. So we could say that it's already a false statement, okay, not a true statement anymore. Okay, so in the next example, we verify that each statement is a false statement by finding a counterexample for each. Okay. So next topic is finding a counterexample. So verify that each of the following statements is a false statement by finding a counterexample. So for all number x, so is it true that for all number of x, x or absolute x is greater than, is greater than 0?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, may mga sagot na doon. Is it true? Is it a true statement, our number one?
True, sir.
Oo, walang counterexample. There is no counterexample. Yes, except 0. Okay. So, having that one, 0, okay, that is already a counterexample. So take note, if you can find one case is enough, okay? You don't need to have 2 or 3 or more, okay? Just one is enough. So in here, this is not a true statement because we have, false, because the counterexample is 0. So 0 is not greater than 0. So this one is a false statement. All right? Do you guys agree?
Yes, sir.
All right. So kala nyo yes ah. So how about the next one? For all number of x squared is greater than x. Okay. So advance si Mr. Batkagan. Okay. Anong sagot nyo? Is this a false statement or a true statement? So this one is false. So dalawa nang sumagot. So both of those who've answered false is correct. So the counter example for this one is, ano yun? 1 and 0. Okay. So if we have here 1, so 1 squared is not greater than 1. So 1 is one counterexample. And then if we have 0, so 0 squared is not also greater than 0. Okay. So, yeah. So kahit isa lang naman, kahit isa lang. So pwedeng 1, pwedeng 0. So even negative 1. Negative 1, ay hindi, mas malaki yung negative 1. So I think etong dalawa lang na to. So positive 1 and then 0. Anyway, so 1 is enough already. This one is a false statement. How about the next one? For all number of square root of x squared is equal to x. True? Sure?
Yes, sir. True.
Hindi. So what about if we have negative 1? Okay. So negative 1 squared is positive 1. And then square root of positive 1 is, teka lang, negative 1 squared is positive 1. Square root of 1 is square root of 1. Kasi hindi ko na alam value nun. And then this one will remain negative 1. Let me see. Okay, so I think the first step that you need to do is, of course, whatever's the one that is inside will be computed first. So if we have negative 1, so it should become positive 1 since negative 1 times negative 1 is positive 1. And then outer part yung susunod. Okay, so we have here the solution. Oh yeah, it's correct. So negative 1 or negative 3 or actually any negative number. Okay, so ito yung mga solution nila. Okay. So from number 1 to number 2 to number 3. So for number 3, consider x is equal to negative 3. Okay. Then just substitute that one to this number. Okay. So negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9 or square root of 9. So square root of 9 is 3. So since 3 is not equal to negative 3, okay, wherein our first original number is negative 3, so we have found a counterexample. So negative 3 is a counterexample. Okay. So thus, you can say that for all numbers of x, square root of x squared is x is a false statement. Okay. So in here, this one is false. So we have x is equal to negative. All right. So none of those statements are true. So all of them are false. So again, here are the solutions. So for number 3, we can have this one, or even 4 or 5, as long as solvable siya by square root. Okay, so in here, one good example of that one is negative 3 squared is 9. And then if you square root it, of course, we'll go back to 3. But it's now in positive form. The original form is still in negative. Alright, so did you guys get the idea on how to get the counterexample so far? Nakuha nyo ba yung concept ng counterexample? So,
Yes,
pinaka
sir.
pinaka-suggestion ko, pag sinabi kong concept, okay, at kasi meron tayong pattern when finding a counterexample. Okay, so pwedeng tatlong number lang or within the range of 5. Okay. So, kahit itong 5 numbers lang na to. So, yung pinakauna is always start from 0. Okay? So, sabi naman kasi dito for all number of x, so there's no limitation. You can always start from 0. So, always start from zeros. Dito pa lang marami nang nahanap na counterexample. If this one is still true, then you can go to the negative. Okay, so pwede ka mag-negative 1, negative 2, negative 3. Or positive 1, or positive 2, or positive 3. Okay, kahit sa range lang ng number na yon. More than that, it's like, hindi na ganun ka-effective. Okay, so when looking for counterexample, you can stick with those 5 numbers or 6 or 7 numbers. Starting from 0 as your origin. Okay, so yun lang yung pinaka-tip na magbibigay ko when it comes to finding a counterexample on a statement. So, of course, after this example, you're going to have a quiz. So, verify that each of the following statement is a false statement by finding a counterexample for each. So, if I can remember, so last time I gave this one to them wherein, pipili lang sila, true or false. So, as early as of now, kapag kabigay ko ito sa inyo, so gawin nyo na or hanapan nyo na ng counterexamples para alam nyo na yung sasagot nyo, number 1 is a false statement. Number 2 is a true statement. Number 3 is a false statement. So, yun yung tip ko. Kasi wala namang competition na magaganap. Hindi nyo naman kailangan ipakita yung solution nyo dun sa canvas. Okay, just the final answer. Alright? So, okay na kayo? So, marami kayong quiz. I think ika-4 na to or ika-5. 4 lang ba? Yeah, ika-4 lang yata to. So, of course, meron pa. Meron pang susunod. We still have 2 more topics, I guess. Or 2 or 1 na lang. Okay. So, konti na lang naman. 6 slides na lang. Okay. So, any questions so far before we proceed to the next one?
Okay.
All right. So, I really hope that you guys have fully understand our topics. Okay. So, next one is deductive reasoning. Okay. So, this is another type of reasoning which is called deductive reasoning. So, deductive reasoning is distinguished from inductive reasoning in that it is the process of reaching a conclusion by applying a general principles and procedures. Okay? So, highlight ko lang to para ma-update. Kasi hindi pa na-highlight. Ayan. So, when you say deductive reasoning, it is a process of reaching a conclusion by applying a general principles and procedures. So, ang inductive reasoning is basing from a raw data. But in deductive reasoning, you're now creating your own formula. Okay? You're creating your own principles or your own rules on how to identify the next one. Okay? Hindi ka na nagbabase lang sa 5 numbers. So for 5 numbers, mape-predict mo lang doon is yung first and second and third. Say, next 3 numbers. But for the deductive reasoning, so kahit na let's say nag-umpisa ka sa 1, so you can predict this one, let's say 100 or even 1,000 if you're going to apply a certain principle. Okay. So yeah, so that's it for deductive reasoning. So this one is actually quite more accurate because this one is using a certain formula. So deductive reasoning is a process of reaching a conclusion by applying general assumptions. So pwedeng procedures or pwedeng principles. So mostly are principles. So bakit ko nasabing principles? Kasi of course, kaya nga meron tayong derivation eh. Okay, so marami niyan sa differential, sa integral. So from this, pwedeng equal sila dito. Magkaiba nga lang ng form. Pero equal sila kasi same yung in-apply yung principle. Okay. So with the idea of math, this is very possible. Okay? This is very helpful, the use of deductive reasoning. Kaya nga meron tayong mga formulas na constant or na fixed kasi kahit anong value ang ilagay mo doon or isalpak mo doon, same na yung sagot or makukuha mo yung accurate na sagot. Unlike inductive reasoning, so pwedeng pa iba-iba. It's always 50-50. Alright? Alright, so let's have examples when it comes to deductive reasoning. So use deductive reasoning to establish a conjecture. Okay? So use deductive reasoning to show that the following procedure produces a number that is 4 times the original number. So ito yung example natin kanina dun sa inductive reasoning. Okay? So same. Okay. Procedure is pick a number, multiply the number by 8, add 6 to the product, divide the sum by 2, and then subtract it by 3. Okay? So kung ibabase nyo dito, okay, so hindi ka napipili ng number. Let's say this one, picking a number, let's change this one into a variable. So let's say variable letter n. Okay? So let n represent the original number. So the next step that you need to do is multiply the number by 8. So 8 times n, or 8n. And then add 6 to the product. Okay? So 8n plus 6. And then divide the sum by 2. So 8n plus 6 divided by 2. And then subtract by 3. Okay? So from here, sinimplify na kasi. So 8n plus 6 divided by 2 became 4n plus 3. So 4n plus 3 minus 3 coming from ito yung subtract 3. So from here, you can simplify it further wherein 3 minus 3 is equal to, 0. So 4n plus 0 is 4n. So as a result, yun, kitang-kita na natin kaagad. Okay, from the inductive reasoning, sabi nga natin kanina, the original number is always times 4 for the result. So, ganun din dito. So, original number is this, let's say, letter n or any variable, and then it's always times 4. Okay, if you followed this certain uh, step or certain procedure, okay, with the use of deductive reasoning. Okay, so we started with n and ended with 4n. So the procedure given in this example produces a number that is 4 times the original number. So similar lang siya or parehas lang siya. It's just that we've applied the principles of mathematics, especially variables. Okay, pinalitan natin siya into variables instead of taking a real number. Okay, so with that being said, kung meron kayong 4n, so anong meron naman dito na nakuha nyo? Okay. So same lang din dapat yung makuha yung result. So pwedeng 7n, pwedeng 6n, pwedeng 5n, pwedeng 3n, and so on and so forth. So use deductive reasoning to show that the following procedure produces a number and identify the multiplier of the n. Okay, so ito yung procedure. So pick a number, multiply the number by 6, add 10 to the product, divide the sum by 2, and subtract by 5. So hint, let n represent the original number. So ano yung makukuha nyo as your final result if you follow this procedure? By applying deductive reasoning. So in applying deductive reasoning, again, so pwedeng gumagamit kayo ng assumptions, procedures, or mostly principles. Edit ko lang. Alright? So yeah, ito yung 5th quiz ninyo. And then, lastly, so ito na yung pinaka nasa topic, I guess. So, inductive reasoning versus deductive reasoning. Okay, so this is just an example. So in the following examples, analyze arguments to determine whether they use inductive or deductive reasoning. Okay, so bibigyan tayo ng scenario, and then we will identify whether the one that they've used is inductive or deductive reasoning. So we have two numbers. For the first one, during the past 10 years, a tree has produced plants every other year. So last year, the tree did not produce plants. So this year, the tree will produce plants. So what is the kind of reasoning that we've used in here for us to be able to say that, so this year, the tree will produce plants. So nasaan yung basis natin? Ano yung ginamit natin? Is it deductive or inductive? For the number one. So from Mr. De Paula, it's inductive. How about the others? What is your answer? Anong sagot nyo? Anong sagot nyo sa number 1 natin? Is it inductive or deductive? What about the others? Anong mga ideas nyo? Okay, so let me know. So, para malaman ko kung naiintindihan nyo ba or hindi. So, coming from Mr. Batkagan, so he says inductive. What about the others? Inductive. Inductive, parang iba naman. So, inductive daw siya. Alright. So, most of you answered. I think all of you answered inductive reasoning. So, this is correct. Right? Inductive reasoning is correct. Okay? Kasi nga, sabi dito, during the past 10 years, and that in that past 10 years, a tree has produced plums every other year. So, ito yung examples natin. So, this year, it produced plums. So, the next year, it will not produce plum. And the next year ulit, nag-produce ng plum. Will not, will produce, will not, will produce hanggang sa yun. So last year, the tree did not produce plums. So this year, the tree will produce plums. So it based from few examples. Okay, so there's a pattern. So this one is inductive reasoning. How about the second one? All home improvements cost more than the estimate. The contractor estimated that home improvement will cost $35,000. So that's my home improvement will cost more than $35,000. Inductive.
Inductive, sir.
Laga, sigurado kayo? Is there anyone whose answer is deductive reasoning?
Yeah.
So, sinong deductive dyan? Wala. What about the others? What are your answers? Inductive also? So, your answer, Miss Liz, is deductive reasoning. What about the rest? So, I think there's a total of 8 students or 9. So, there's only 3 people who answered deductive. So, madami na kayo ah. Okay, so coming from Mr. Dominic Labnas, deductive. Okay. So the correct answer for number 2 is deductive reasoning. Okay, so if you're going to take a look at this one, all home improvements cost more than the estimate. So this is from the experience or from the principles or from the idea or from the experience of engineers or contractor itself. So the contractor estimated that my home improvement will cost $35,000. Pero yun na nga, meron na kagaya dito, yung estimate is always more than. Okay? So as a conclusion, thus my home improvement will cost more than $35,000. Okay? So this one is deductive reasoning. So kung papansin niyo walang examples dito na pinagbisan. Okay? So general conclusion kaagad tayo or general assumption. So if it's general conclusion, so meaning he takes it from reality or what he's being experienced. So deductive reasoning. All right. So here are the solutions of those two numbers. So I'll leave the reading part to you guys. And then, of course, as always, after having an example, you're going to have a quiz. Tignan na yun. I think ika-anim na to. So you guys have a total of 6 quiz on this module. So don't worry, sobrang dali lang naman nilang lahat. Sobrang ikli lang din. Sobrang bilis lang tapusin. Okay, so for this one, of course, the same with the last example. So determine whether each of the following argument is an example of inductive reasoning or deductive reasoning. So we only have two numbers. Okay. So after that, that's the end of it. Okay. So the coverage of your exam, your midterm exam next week will be chapter 1 to chapter or module 1 to module 4 because this one is actually the module 4, but it's namely chapter 3.0. So the naming is quite confusing. Anyway, this is already module 4. So the coverage chapter exam or of your midterm exam is module 1 to module 4. So check ko lang. Ilan yung quiz nyo? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. So 6 quizzes. So ipapublish ko na sila para pwede nyo nang sagutan kagad-agad. Alright, so do you guys have a question so far or clarification regarding with our discussion for today?
Answer.
How about the others?
Nothing, sir.
Alright, so to those who doesn't have a question, so you may now leave and then have a happy Wednesday.
Bye, sir.
Goodbye.
Bye, sir.
Goodbye. Matane. Is that a Japanese word? Isn't it Jane? How about the others? Yung mga naiwan. Nani? Nande? Anyway, so, right, so goodbye, guys. So, I'll stop sharing my screen now. So, yeah. Yeah, sayonara. Right, so it seems that natira. Hindi ko alam kung nandiyan kayo. Anyway, so, wala tayong question. Question ba kayo? Mr. Alexir, Mr. Christian, Mr. Dan, Mr. Garcia. Ayan. Yeah.
Sir, wala.
Alright, so I will end this meeting now. Goodbye.